Here you have the game CleoCatra. It is a 2 to 4 player game. Some of the pieces you'll find are the pyramid tiles. They're going to be used in how we rescue the cats. Then you have your rescue meeples and the score tokens. The inspector tokens are going to be very important. And finally, you have the inspector tracking sheet. These are the primary components to the game. So as you can see in this game, you have the first player starting out by laying out the first tile, and then they're going to put out an inspector. So while they're waiting for the next player, they're going to put out a tile. And you'll notice that in the first few rounds, that's generally what you will see. A tile laid out and then an inspector. Inspectors and then the helpers are how you score points. The game ends when the first player to 23. And then everybody gets one last turn that's left in that round. So you see they've played a tile and then an inspector each. This is a 4-player playthrough of CleoCatra. It's 2 actions per turn. There are the tile actions, which is scout, where you're going to draw a tile from the pile and then place it face up adjacent to one or more pyramid tiles. Then you also have the search option, where you take a tile that is unoccupied by a rescuer or inspector tile, then move it to another place on the pyramids. Then you also have the rescuer actions, and there's 3 types, where you have dispatch, where you place a rescuer on the tile that you've just placed or moved using a tile action, or you can team up, where you place a rescuer on a tile adjacent to one that you occupy. And finally, the best part, the rescue action, where you will score off of your rescuers and then helpers if you have some there. And that's how the turn orders can go. So everybody gets 2 actions, and you must take 2 actions unless you're doing the rescue action. If you're doing the rescue action, that would be the end of your turn, and that could be the only action you take on your turn. So as you see, the pyramid is slowly progressing to an interesting shape. You'll see throughout as you play the game, it's going to take on many different shapes, because as the pile slowly goes away and then completely does not exist, you'll have no choice but to move tiles around. So it gets more strategic as the pile goes down as to what your moves are going to be, because the only way to put out a rescuer without going adjacent is to move or lay a new tile. So the most important part of the game is the scoring. When scoring, you're going to score off of your rescuers and your helpers. So in order to score points, you're going to score points off of the unique cat tiles surrounding your rescuers, and then also your helpers if you have some during that scoring turn you're taking. So as you can see, the black is taking their turn, and they've chosen to lay out a helper, and now they're going to score off of them. So they're going to score a total of 4 points for their rescuer and their helper. And then, since they're going to remove their meeples and then put an inspector right where their rescuer was. So now they've moved their score token up the track onto 4, and the game continues. So here you're going to see that the black has taken their turn, and they have chosen to score off of their meeples, and they have 3 of them out. So they're going to use the middle one as their rescuer, and since their helpers are on different colored tiles, they can use both of them to score points. So as you can see, they scored a total of 9 points with their rescuer and their helper. Alright, so now we're going to remove the blue meeples and then set out the inspector token where the blue was. And now it's the pink start, and they've chosen right off the bat to score with their 3. And if you look, that they are on several different tiles as well for theirs. So they scored a total of 9, and then they removed their meeples, and they're going to put an inspector token out as well. So now all the inspectors are out. So as the game progresses, when people score some more, they're going to be taking them off of whatever cat tile they choose. So as the game continues, everybody's going to take their turns. So now green's going to take their turn. They're going to move a tile. Now there's none left in the pile. So they've actually opted out of moving a tile and are now just simply going to place an adjacent helper. And then now they're going to go ahead and score. So green has scored 5 points. They're going to remove their meeples, and then they're going to take an inspector from one of the tiles. So now the game carries on, and it's back to the black. And the blacks decided to move a tile, and then they're going to lay out a rescuer. So that's the end of their turn. And now it's on to blue again. Alright, now here's where things are going to get a little tricky. You can't place one of your rescuers out without moving a tile or laying a tile if you don't have any adjacent to where you want to lay. So, while looking at this, it looks like there's no tiles that can be moved. But the stipulation to moving tiles is simply you cannot break the pyramid. So that simply means you can't move a tile that's going to split the formation into 2 separate groups. So it is a little bit of a thinker when figuring out which tile you can take that's not going to split into 2 groups, but there's actually several different options as to what can be moved, because you have to remember you can't move tiles that are occupied, which means it has an inspector or your meeple or another player's meeple. That's what occupied means. So in this game, in this round, they have the option to move several different ones. So there's several different options they can choose to do in regards to movement. They can move this tile here because it will not cause separated groups, as you can see. So even though it looks like a circle and it's a complete grouping, you're going to look for ones that are not going to cause 2 separate groups. So you can do the 2 end ones as well. You just can't do that center blue one, and then you can't do the green one that's sandwiched between the inspector token and the black meeple, because that would create 2 separate groups. So here's what I mean by 2 separate groups. By removing this green one, you have this blue one that's out all by itself, and then the cluster that's there. So that one cannot be removed. That is what it means to remove one that's going to create 2 different groups. So that one cannot be removed. So blue's decided to move one of the tiles on the right hand side and then place their rescuer. So that's what you would do in a situation where it looks like you can't do anything, but there is actually always options to do. You just have to really think about it and figure out what's not going to split things into 2. Like I said before, as the game goes on, it's going to take on all kinds of different shapes. Sometimes it's going to be a real thinker as to what you're going to move and what you're going to be able to score on and do. So as you can see, since he moved that blue one, it opened up the definite possibilities of moving the yellow and the blue ones, because now it definitely did not look like it was a whole piece, and it looked more by itself and unable to split things into 2 groups. So the game continues on as everybody moves tiles around and places their rescue meeples since there's no tiles left in the pile. So you have them continuing on. Black's decided to place a helper adjacent to their rescuer and then have chosen to score. So they've scored a total of 4 points. Since their middle rescuer is surrounded by 2 pinks on each side, they're not going to be able to score off of the 2 pink, but they will be able to score off of the 1, and they can still use their helper. So now they're going to place an inspector right where their rescuer was from a different location. And I think that's pretty cool, where you can choose which inspector you're going to move once all 3 are out, because you can kind of set yourself up. Or you can kind of place in a spot where you think, oh, my opponent's probably going to pick that tile next, and kind of mess with their plan, so it kind of makes them rethink. And then it also helps you then get ahead of them scoring, because of course you want to be the first one to 23. So now it's the blue player's turn, and they have chosen to simply do adjacent workers. So they laid an adjacent worker and then a worker adjacent to that one. So that would be the end of their turn. So they're setting themselves up for a big scoring round for their next turn. Alright, Pink's chosen to remove this tile here, and as you can see, it did not break the pyramid up into 2 different groups, so that was totally okay. And they're going to place their rescuer down there. So they've set themselves up pretty decent there too, because they actually have another meeple right next to it. So they got 2 meeples that they can score off of next turn if they choose. So now Black's chosen to take the pink one from there. And again, that does not split the pyramid up into 2 groups. And now they've placed their rescue meeple on the space. Black is going to decide to go ahead and score points again. And then move a inspector tile right where they're at. Right where their rescuer was at. And then it's back to blue again. So Blues decided to score, and they're going to be able to score with all 3 of their meeples. So now the next player is going to move the blue tile. They're deciding where to move it to. And then they're going to place another of their workers out. So they've set themselves up for a 3 set of meeple scoring for next turn as well. So as you move on in the game, it's just going to be a bunch of moving of the tiles and laying them where it's going to work for you to score the most points. So as you can see, they chose to move a tile and then score off of those tiles with their rescuer and helper. And the game goes on. And you'll notice as you play through it that sometimes the pieces will get a little all over the place as you try to pick one out. You just have to re-put it back together, then place it where you want. And always remember, the only way to place a rescuer is by moving a tile or drawing one from the draw pile if there's any left and placing it out. And then you can place a helper adjacent to any of your rescuers as well if you were not able to move a tile or you chose not to move a tile in order to score points. Alright, and now the pink player is going to score off of their 3 and then move one of the inspector tokens to where their rescuer was placed, and then they're going to move their red score token up the score track. And the game's getting pretty close to an end. Always remember, after you remove your rescuer and helpers, if you used any, to place an inspector token where your rescuer was. So sometimes it's a bit strategic, especially when it gets this close to the end of the game, as to which one you're going to want to move. And here the players removed the blue tile and is going to move it to a different spot on the pyramid here. Gotta get it in there just right. And they're going to place their rescuer on there. Then you have the black player that placed a worker adjacent to their rescuer and is now going to score off of it. And they are only 3 points away from getting to 23 and enacting the final round. So now everybody's going to get a little more strategic because they don't want the black player to reach 23. They want to be able to get more points themselves, trying to win the game. So the game continues on with moving tiles and placing rescuers, especially since it's getting down to the wire as to the black player is only a few points away from 23. So they've moved a tile down to the bottom to set themselves up for scoring points. Gonna put the rescuer on the tile they just moved. And now the next player is going to choose to place a meeple adjacent to one that they already have out. And as you can see, the black player is setting themselves up to try to score the last 3 points that they need to end the game. So they've moved a tile and then placed a rescuer on it. And then the next player has decided to just simply score off of the rescuer they have down. This is the only time that you can take just one action during your turn, whenever you choose to rescue cats, which means you're scoring points. And here pink has decided to score off of their one meeple, and they are now also at 20, just like the black player. And whenever you're placing your inspector, make sure to always place it on where your rescuer was. And now green has decided to score off of their meeples. So they're going to count theirs up, move their green scoring token on the pyramid track, and then place an inspector token right where their rescuer was. And here it looks like black has placed a meeple adjacent to another one, and they have chosen to score as their second action. And since they have scored now with using their rescuer and their helper, they are now scored a total of 25 points, so they have now enacted the final round of play for all of the players. And still remember to place your inspector cube where your rescuer was, even though it is the last round now. And now as a final move for the blue player, they're going to move a tile where they so choose. And then they're also going to place a meeple. While this did not score them any more points, it still let them have a final turn. So that is the end of the game, and the total scoring was 25 for black, 20 for red, 18 for green, and 16 for blue.